Good morning. Now we continue with our reading of the Pilgrim's Progress as Christian and Hopeful meet Demas the silversmith. Then I saw in my dream that a little off the road, over against the silver mine, stood Demas, to call the passengers to come and see, who said to Christian and his fellow, Ho, turn aside hither, and I will show you a thing. Christian, what thing so deserving as to turn us out of the way? Demas, here is a silver mine, and some digging in it for treasure. If you will come with a little pains, you may richly provide for yourselves. Then said Hopeful, let us go see. Not I, said Christian. I've heard of this place before now, and how many have been slain, and besides, that treasure is a snare to those that seek it, for it hindereth them in their pilgrimage. Then Christian called to Demas, saying, Is not the place dangerous? Hath it not hindered many in their pilgrimage? Demas, not very dangerous, except to those that are careless. But withal he blushed as he spake. Then said Christian to Hopeful, Let us not stir a step, but still keep on our way. Hopeful, I will warrant you, when Bunyan comes up, if he hath the same invitation as we, he will turn in thither to see. Christian, no doubt thereof, for his principles lead him that way, and 100 to 1 but he dies there. Then Demas called again, saying, But will you not come over and see? Then Christian roundly answered, saying, Demas, thou art an enemy to the right ways of the Lord of this way, and hast been already condemned for thine own turning aside by one of his majesty's judges. And why seekest thou to bring us into the like condemnation? Besides, if we had all turn aside, our lord the king will certainly hear thereof, and will there put us to shame, where we would stand with boldness before him. Demas cried again that he was also one of their fraternity, and that if they would tarry a little while, he also would walk with them. Then said Christian, What is thy name? Is it not the same by the which I have called thee? Yes, my name is Demas. I am the son of Abraham. Christian, I know you. Gehazi was your great-grandfather, and Judas your father, and you have trod their steps. But it is a devilish prank that thou usest. Thy father was hanged for a traitor, and thou deservest no better reward. Assure thyself that when we come to the king, we will do him word of this thy behavior. Thus they went on their way. By this time Bunyan and his companions was come again to within sight, and they had first went over to Demas. Now, whether they fell into the pit by looking over the brink thereof, or whether they went down to dig, or whether they were smothered in the bottom by the damps that commonly arise, of these things I am not certain. But this I observed, that they never were seen again in the way. Then sang Christian, Bunyan and silver Demas both agree, one calls, the other runs, that he may be a sharer in his lucre, so these two take up in this world, and no further go. Now I saw that just on the other side of this plain the pilgrims came to a place where stood an old monument, hard by the high wayside, at the sight of which they were both very concerned because of the strangeness of the form thereof. For it seemed to them as if it had been a woman transformed into the shape of a pillar. Here therefore they stood looking upon it, but could not for a time tell what they should make thereof. At last Hopeful espied written above the head thereof a writing in an unusual hand. But he, being no scholar, called to Christian, for he was learned, to see if he could pick out the meaning. So he came, and a little while after laying the letters together, he found the same to be this, Remember Lot's wife. So he read it to his fellow, after which they both concluded that it was the pillar of salt into which Lot's wife was turned for her looking back with a covetous heart when she was going to Sodom for safety, from Sodom for safety. Which sudden and amazing sight gave them occasion of this discourse. Christian, Ah, my brother, this is a seasonable sight. It came opportunely to us after the invitation which Demas gave us to come over the hill, to view the hill lucre. And had we gone over as he desired us, and as thou wast inclined to do, my brother, we had, for aught I know, been made ourselves a spectacle for those who should come after to behold. Hopeful. I'm so sorry that I was so foolish, and am made to wonder that I am not now as Lot's wife. For wherein was the difference twixt her sin and mine? She only looked back, and I had a desire to go see. Let grace be adored, and let me be ashamed that ever such a thing should be in mine heart. Christian, let us notice of what we see here for our help for time to come. This woman escaped one judgment, for she fell not by the destruction of Sodom. Yet she was destroyed by another, as we see. She is turned into a pillar of salt. Hopeful. True. And she may be to us both caution and example. Caution that we should shun her sin, or a sign of what judgment will overtake us, such as not be prevented by this caution. So Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, with the 250 men that perished in their sin, did also become a sign, or example to others to beware. But above all, I muse at one thing, to wit, how Demas and his fellows can stand so confidently yonder to look for that treasure which this woman, but for looking behind her after, for we read not that she slept 1 foot out of the way, was turned into a pillar of salt, especially since the judgment which overtook her did make her an example within sight of where they are, for they cannot choose but see her, did they but lift up their eyes. Christian. It is a thing to be wondered at, and it argueth that their heart is grown desperate in the case, and I cannot tell who to compare them to so fitly as to them that pick pockets in the presence of the judge, or that will cut purses under the gallows. It is said of the men of Sodom that they were sinners exceedingly, because they were sinners before the Lord, that is, in his sight, and notwithstanding the kindnesses that he had showed them, for the land of Sodom was like the Garden of Eden heretofore. This therefore provoked him in the more to jealousy, and made their plague as hot as the fire of the Lord out of heaven could make it. And it is most rationally to be concluded that such, even as they are, shall sin in the sight, yea, and in that too, in despite of such examples that are continually set before them, to caution them to the contrary, must be partakers of the severest judgments. Hopeful. Doubtless thou hast said the truth, but what a mercy it is, that neither thou, nor but especially I, am not made myself this example. This ministereth occasion to us to thank God, to fear before him, and to always remember Lot's wife. Then I saw that they went on their way to a pleasant river, which David the king called the river of God, but John the river of the water of life. Now their way lay just upon the bank of the river. Here therefore Christian and his companion walked with great delight. They drank also of the water of the river, which was pleasant and enlivening to their weary spirits. Besides, on the banks of this river, on either side, were green trees that bore all manner of fruit, and the leaves of the trees were good for medicine. With the fruit of these trees they were also much delighted. In the leaves they eat to prevent surfeits and other diseases that are incidents to those that heat their blood by travels. On either side of the river was also a meadow curiously beautified with lilies, and it was green all the year long. In this meadow they lay down and slept, for here they might lie down safely. When they awoke, they gathered again of the fruit of the trees, and drank again of the water of life, and lay down again to sleep. Thus they did several days and nights. Then they sang, Behold ye these crystal streams do glide, to comfort pilgrims by the highway side. The meadows green beside their fragrant smell yield dainties for them, and he that can tell what pleasant fruit, yea, leaves these trees do yield, will soon sell all, that he may buy this field. So when they were disposed to go on, for they were not as yet at their journey's end, they eat and drank and departed. And so today, the encounter with Demas, they pretty well were successful in terms of avoiding that temptation of money, of seeking wealth, but Hopeful had it in his heart to seek that wealth. It was his desire at first, until Christian turned him out of that direction. And so Hopeful, in seeing the memorial to Lot's wife at the end of that section of the pilgrimage, was concerned that he was very near to himself falling under God's judgment. Shows us the importance of companionship in the Christian journey, that friendship can be that which at times directs us away from what is bad for us, that the encouragement and the sharpening that we get from other Christians can keep us from sin. And we hope it always to be so. We certainly don't want it to be the opposite. We don't want to lead each other into a path of destruction, but we want to walk with each other on the way that leads to life. We see at the end of this section that beautiful picture of Christian and hopeful by the river of living water and the beauty of that respite that they enjoy. They have another trial ahead, so this is a time for them to enjoy. And so it is for us. We have times of refreshing, times of rest in the midst of the challenges of life. So thanks for watching today. I hope you'll join us next time.